I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. I watched it for the first time in probably 16, 17 years.
Nothing has brought me greater joy than watching the Walt Disney Company absolutely panic over the last few weeks. They're mad at SouthPark because they're making fun of their woke ideologies, constantly race swapping or religion swapping everything in their movie.
They didn't just mock her, they annihilated her. When SouthPark unleashed its ruthless satire on RachelZegler and Disney's already floundering SnowWhite remake, the internet didn't merely react, it exploded. What began as a controversial casting choice had already ignited simmering outrage. But the moment the iconic animated series took aim, that slow burn erupted into a full-scale inferno. The episode held nothing back, gleefully mocking, mimicking, and amplifying every criticism fans had been voicing online for months.
One major development going on now involves more to do with RachelZegler and her attitude towards SouthPark Studios and Paramount after learning about what they are planning for their upcoming special, called the DEI Special.
Zegler's name rocketed to the top of trending charts within hours. Memes took over social media. Timelines drowned in clips, shared, dissected, and remixed on repeat. Some laughed, others winced, but everyone had an opinion, whether they backed the remake or despised it. The parody didn't just mock Rachel. It turned her own words against her, twisting interviews and sound bites into comedic weapons that hit harder than any headline.
The last time I had the dream, I was walking down the school hallway. And that's when I started to notice that something's wrong. Everyone I cared about has been systematically replaced. And finally, I want to scream, and I'm like, why are they replacing every single character with someone who is diverse?
And just like that, what was once hyped as Disney's next big fairy tale unraveled into a full-blown pop culture catastrophe. The moment SouthPark aired its scathing takedown, the narrative spiraled out of control. What followed was a PR disaster wrapped in razor-sharp satire. RachelZegler wasn't just portrayed as a miscast actress. She was reimagined as a full-blown caricature, seemingly plucked from the noisiest corners of internet outrage. In SouthPark's upcoming DI special, a brutal sequel to their viral Panderverse episode, Rachel's animated counterpart barges onto sets, hijacks scenes, and delivers over-the-top monologues about how the original SnowWhite is a toxic relic of the past. Subtlety? Not a chance. They went for spectacle, and it landed like a bomb.
Even if everything worked perfectly, it would have been almost impossible for this movie to succeed, because you're comparing it to one of the most beloved films of all time and a truly groundbreaking movie.
She wasn't just dismissive, she was militant, shouting down her co-stars, rolling her eyes at script notes, and launching into dramatic monologues about equity and modern salvation through progress. The animated Rachel hijacked every scene with theatrical fury. Whenever someone else tried to speak, she'd cut them off, proclaiming herself the only one bold enough to confront toxic nostalgia. The original SnowWhite? She labeled it toxic trash, scoffing at anything resembling romance or tradition. But the brilliance of the parody wasn't just in how outrageous it was in how uncomfortably close it hit to reality. The character's over-the-top rants echoed things Rachel had actually said in interviews. It didn't feel entirely fictional, it felt eerily familiar. And as she tore through each moment like a crusader on a mission to save society, her fellow characters, from cartoon Disney execs to fairy tale sidekicks, sat frozen in cringe, afraid to speak up, terrified they'd be steamrolled next.
On the original production, I was scared of it. Oh, it was so weird. It was the stalker. Like, I feel like if you are taking on the most iconic Disney role ever, genuinely, like this was the most prolific Disney film, I feel like you should kind of have some sort of reverence for the original production.
And the wildest part? It wasn't far off from things she's actually said. But that was just the surface, because what happened behind the scenes after the parody aired is where the real shock begins. It all started like a dream. Fresh off her critically acclaimed breakout in West Side Story, RachelZegler was the talk of Hollywood, a rising star with the voice, charm, and screen presence to carry a major studio blockbuster. Disney proudly unveiled her as the new face of SnowWhite in its ambitious live-action remake, heralding her as the perfect heroine for a new generation. The film was pitched as a bold reinvention, classic Disney magic infused with modern sensibilities. Press releases gushed. Industry insiders applauded the casting as visionary. And Rachel? She beamed with pride, calling the role a huge honor, and sharing hopes of inspiring young girls around the world. The stage was set. The marketing machine was revving. Everything pointed toward a fairy tale success. But that bright, hopeful narrative unraveled almost immediately. Within days, the backlash erupted.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely, when it got announced,
SnowWhite! He wasn't a stalker, by the way.
Thing that was like trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
Fans of the 1937 original were far from thrilled. The casting of a Latina actress to play a character literally named SnowWhite ignited heated debate across social media. But it wasn't just the casting. It was the comments that poured gasoline on the fire. In interview after interview, Rachel openly criticized the source material. She called the original weird and outdated. She mocked the prince as a stalker. She dismissed the central love story entirely, declaring that this new SnowWhite wouldn't dream of romance. She'd dream of power. Critics and YouTubers pounced, flooding comment sections with the same biting question. Why cast someone who clearly doesn't respect the original?
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a SnowWhite.
That laugh.
That is
not going to be saved by
You
the
wrote
prince.
it?
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be. The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Say it louder so your other eye can hear you.
Our rights are on the line, folks.
The right to buy
reproductive
Cosby
rights.
sweaters?
Come on.
That's the face
Go
of a
vote blue.
serial killer.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
And this started with the movie star RachelZegler, who I believe would be categorized as a loudmouth dope.
And that is why we hate the diversity, equity, and inclusion casting and writing in movies.
In addition to that, there was already an uproar about her being cast as SnowWhite because she is not Caucasian. She is a Latina. She is half Colombian. And so people were like, why were you cast in the first place? We just had a black Little Mermaid. Now we're having a Latina SnowWhite, and she is literally called SnowWhite. This doesn't make sense. Yeah, the entire film's about a love story. It's about a love story because that's what the point of the film is. And I'm sorry that chivalry in a man pursuing you is now deemed as stalking, which now it's kind of making sense why men are opting out of the dating scene. As an actor, you don't get to dictate anything. You don't get to dictate if a film actually happens. You don't get to dictate when it is shot, how it is shot, if you can ever speak about it to the public. You are simply just there to show up and say your lines and look the way they want you to look.
For many, this didn't feel like progress. It felt like a razor. Then SouthPark stepped in. Trey Parker and Matt Stone are no strangers to controversy. Their entire legacy is built on crossing lines, mocking sacred cows, and diving headfirst into the messiest corners of pop culture. Religion, politics, Hollywood scandals. Nothing has ever been off limits. They've skewered world leaders, celebrities, megacorporations, and entire ideologies with a level of precision that turns episodes into viral firestorms. This time, they had new ammunition, and they didn't hold back. The target? A project already drowning in backlash. Disney's live-action SnowWhite. Fueled by months of online outrage, media chaos, and one polarizing lead actress, Parker and Stone cooked up a savage takedown in their DI special. A spiritual sequel to the Panderverse. The result? A brutal parody that left audiences stunned and scrambling to rewind what they had just witnessed. It wasn't just a jab at the film. It was a full-on dissection of Disney's new direction, the implosion of a once-beloved fairy tale, and the firestorm surrounding RachelZegler herself. The satire didn't pull punches. It mocked the plot changes, the casting, and most viciously, Hollywood's obsession with performative virtue signaling. What made it hit even harder? The lines spoken by the animated Rachel were near-verbatim echoes of her real-life interviews. The same clips critics had been tearing apart for months. The resemblance was no accident. It was deliberate, and it stung. For audiences already disillusioned with Disney's remake, SouthPark felt like long overdue vindication. For supporters, it was an uncomfortable moment of reckoning. Either way, the parody didn't just hit close to home, it cracked the foundation. Their version of Rachel was loud, smug, and self-righteous. She hijacked the story, ranted about saving the world, berated the evil queen for stealing her spotlight, and bulldozed through every scene with moral superiority. It was scathing, and it went viral within hours. Clips flooded social media. Fans posted side-by-side comparisons between the parody and Rachel's real interviews. The overlap? Unsettling. This wasn't just satire, it was commentary with a mirror held uncomfortably close. And that's when everything unraveled. Sources close to Rachel say she was furious. She felt ambushed, attacked. Insiders claim she saw the parody not just as a professional slight, but as a deeply personal assault. Not just on her as an actress, but as a woman of color trying to challenge outdated norms and reshape the industry from within. To Rachel, this wasn't a takedown of her performance. It was a hit on her mission. A mockery of her push for diversity, inclusivity, and a modern voice in a historically narrow system. And to her, that made it unforgivable. To Rachel, the satire wasn't just cruel. It was erasure. In her eyes, it stripped away years of effort, turning her passion into a punchline and mocking the very causes she stood for. She reportedly wanted to speak out, issue a statement, clarify her stance, and defend herself. But Disney had other plans. According to multiple leaks, studio executives moved quickly. The SouthPark parody had gone nuclear, and damage control became the top priority. Emergency meetings were held within hours to assess the fallout. Their solution? Silence. Rachel was told to go dark. No tweets. No Instagram stories. No offhand comments in interviews. No reaction at all. The concern wasn't just the parody itself, it was what might come next. Execs feared that even a well-meaning defense could pour gasoline on the fire and spark a second wave of backlash. The directive was clear: vanish from the spotlight. Disney quietly pulled the plug on all of Rachel's upcoming appearances, talk shows, red carpets, even a rumored performance on SNL. The public excuse? Scheduling conflicts. But insiders knew the truth. RachelZegler had become radioactive. Meanwhile, chaos was erupting inside the Magic Kingdom. Bob Iger, recently reinstalled as CEO, was already in damage control mode. Marvel's latest box office flops were sending shockwaves through the industry. Fans were fed up with the formula. The Daredevil reboot was undergoing massive reshoots. Entire plotlines scrapped, showrunners replaced, and characters rewritten in a last-ditch effort to salvage the mess. Then there was Disney+. Subscriber numbers were in free fall. US retention had cratered, international growth had stalled, and complaints were mounting. Longtime fans were canceling subscriptions, citing political overreach, creative burnout, and a loss of Disney's core identity. The empire was teetering. And now SnowWhite, a film once pitched as a bold new chapter, had become the latest symbol of everything going wrong. What was meant to revitalize the brand had turned into a punchline. And SouthPark had just made it 10 times worse. According to insiders, Disney went into full-blown crisis mode. Daily meetings, talking points rewritten on the fly, whispers of reshoots, script overhauls, and even entire scenes being quietly scrapped. No one knew where to point the finger. Rachel, for her outspoken interviews? Gal Gadot, for allegedly clashing with her behind the scenes? The fans, for rejecting the remake's direction? Or SouthPark, for exposing it all with surgical satire? Behind closed doors, things grew even more tense. Rachel reportedly felt blindsided, betrayed. Her camp, according to sources, began quietly exploring legal options, accusing the studio of Rachel's silence wasn't just frustrating, it felt like betrayal. According to sources close to the situation, RachelZegler and her team believed Disney had breached key clauses in her contract. Agreements that guaranteed promotional support, media visibility, and an active presence during the lead-up to the film's release. Instead of defending their lead actress amid growing controversy, the studio had seemingly sidelined her, pulling her from talk shows, red carpets, and major interviews, moves reportedly made without her input. Behind the scenes, tensions flared. Legal advisors began poring over the fine print, trying to determine if Disney's decisions could be classified as violations of the agreement. No official legal filing was made, but the fact that legal action was even on the table revealed how fractured the relationship had become. Was it a negotiating tactic? Or a genuine legal threat? No one knew for sure. But one thing was obvious. The trust between Rachel and Disney was unraveling. Fast, even Gal Gadot, once considered the film's saving grace, was now caught in the storm. Rumors swirled of icy silence between her and Rachel. Whispers of unbearable tension on set. Entire scenes were reportedly scrapped due to behind-the-scenes friction. And online, it was all being turned into memes. Meanwhile, SouthPark's parody continued to trend, and something strange happened. The discourse shifted. It wasn't just about SnowWhite anymore. It became a cultural flashpoint, tradition versus progress. Representation versus reverence. A classic tale versus a rewritten one. Rachel's defenders praised her for challenging outdated fairy tale tropes and fighting for inclusive storytelling. Her critics accused her of arrogance, mocking a beloved classic, then crying foul when the internet pushed back. But both sides agreed on one thing: the parody had struck a nerve. Whether you laughed or cringed, you couldn't ignore it. Now the big question looms: can SnowWhite 2025 still succeed? The odds aren't good. The film has already been delayed, rewritten, reshot. Its star is feuding with its studio. Its public image has been hijacked by satire. Even if the visuals impress, even if Gal Gadot delivers as the evil queen, can the film overcome this firestorm? Or is it destined to be remembered as the movie that broke Disney? Because here's the truth. This was never just about one actress or one film. It's about what happens when a billion-dollar brand loses control of its narrative. When modern messaging collides with nostalgic expectation. When you're caught between two generations, each with very different visions of what a princess should be. RachelZegler may not have meant to ignite a culture war. But thanks to SouthPark's no-holds-barred satire, she's become the face of it. Whether she recovers from that, or whether SnowWhite does, is a story still being written. And if you thought this saga was over, think again. Buzz is already building that SouthPark may return to the SnowWhite drama in a future episode. Some insiders even claim Disney is bracing for a second strike. One that might target Bob Iger himself. So what do you think? Is this just growing pains for a modern fairy tale? Or is Disney finally paying the price for forgetting the magic that made its classics timeless? Let us know in the comments. And for more behind-the-scenes chaos, celebrity meltdowns, and pop culture takedowns, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Because trust us, this isn't the last time SouthPark will shake Hollywood to its core.